Far to the east of Moscow, 9 time zones away from the Kremlin walls, there is a peninsula that looks like a jagged spearhead thrust into the Pacific. It is a place where the map of Russia runs out of land, but the Earth itself does not run out of energy. This is Kamchatka. If Antarctica is the planet in deep freeze, Kamchatka is the planet in the throes of creation. It is a land of fire and ice, a 1,200-kilometer spine of mountains and magma where the ground is never truly still. There are no roads connecting it to the rest of the world. You cannot drive here. You cannot take a train here. You arrive by air, or you arrive by sea, or you do not arrive at all. From the window of a plane, it looks like a different planet entirely. A landscape of smoking cones, black volcanic deserts, and lush green valleys cut by rivers that flash silver in the sun. It is the same size as Japan, yet it holds fewer people than a single district of Tokyo. Most of them live in one city on the bay, leaving the rest of this massive wilderness to the bears, the eagles, and the volcanoes. The geography here is defined by violence. Kamchatka sits directly on the Pacific Ring of Fire, the volatile seam where the Pacific tectonic plate grinds beneath the Okhotsk plate. This subduction consumes the ocean floor and births mountains. There are over 300 volcanoes on this peninsula. 29 of them are currently active. This density of firepower exists nowhere else on Earth. The horizon is not a line. It is a rhythmic succession of peaks, some perfect snow-white pyramids, others shattered calderas leaking sulfur and steam. The highest of them, Klyuchevskaya Sopka, rises 4,750 meters into the sky. It is a perfect cone, a stratovolcano of classical beauty that is almost constantly erupting, coughing ash and lava bombs onto its icy flanks. To stand at its base is to feel the vibration of the planet's engine. The locals do not speak of the mountain as a rock. They speak of it as a neighbor, moody and dangerous. When Klyuchevskaya clears its throat, ash falls on villages 100 kilometers away, turning winter snow into gray concrete. But the fire is not just in the heights. In the Kronotsky Nature Reserve, hidden within a deep canyon, lies the Valley of Geysers. Discovered only in 1941, it is a lost world that rivals Yellowstone or Iceland, yet it remained unknown to humanity for nearly all of history. Here, the river is warm. The banks are stained vivid colors by thermophilic bacteria, orange, bright green, deep red, painting the mud in patterns that look like abstract art. Jets of boiling water shoot into the air on a schedule dictated by the pressure cooker beneath the crust. Mud pots bubble and pop with a thick rhythmic sound, like a heavy soup simmering. The air smells of rotten eggs and wet stone. It is a fragile place. A single landslide in 2007 buried many of the geysers, creating a thermal lake, only for the water to recede years later and the geysers to reawaken. It is a reminder that the landscape here is fluid. It changes not over millions of years, but over days. Winter in Kamchatka is not merely a season, it is a siege. The peninsula hangs between the frozen expanse of Siberia and the wet, cyclone-generating machine of the North Pacific. When these forces collide, they create storms of apocalyptic scale. Snow does not just fall, it accumulates in layers measured in meters. In the capital, Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, it is normal to walk through tunnels carved in the snowbanks to reach your front door. Cars disappear until spring. The white silence covers the volcanoes, masking the black ash, smoothing the jagged lava fields into soft, rolling dunes. But unlike the dry cold of the Antarctic plateau, this is a wet, heavy cold. The snow is laden with moisture. It sticks to the trees, turning the birch forests into strange, bent sculptures. Avalanches are constant, roaring down the slopes of the volcanoes, sweeping away anything foolish enough to be in their path. Yet, beneath this suffocating blanket, the volcanic earth keeps warm. In the calderas, hot springs steam against the snow, creating oases where green grass grows in February, tiny islands of summer in a sea of winter. When the grip of winter finally breaks, usually in May or June, the water is unleashed. Kamchatka becomes a land of rivers, and with the rivers comes the lifeblood of the ecosystem, the salmon. This is one of the world's last great salmon strongholds. They come from the Pacific, millions upon millions of them. Sockeye, coho, chinook, pink, chum. They fight their way up the fast-flowing currents, guided by an ancient magnetic map, returning to the exact gravel beds where they were born. The rivers turn red with their bodies. It is a migration of desperate energy. The fish do not eat once they enter fresh water. They essentially decay while still swimming, consuming their own muscle to fuel the journey, driving toward the sole purpose of spawning. Once they lay their eggs, they die. Their bodies drift downstream, piling up on the banks, decomposing and releasing nitrogen and phosphorus into the soil. This is the engine of Kamchatka. The trees grow tall because of dead salmon. The insects thrive on the carcasses. And the king of the peninsula comes down to the water to feast. The Kamchatka brown bear is a giant, rivaled in size only by the Kodiak bear across the ocean. They are massive beasts, golden brown or dark chocolate in color, weighing up to 700 kilograms. Nowhere else on Earth do bears gather in such numbers. At Kuril Lake, a vast crater lake in the south filled with spawning salmon, you can see 30, 40, 50 bears at once. They are not the solitary ghosts of the European forests. Here, they are a society. They tolerate one another because the food is endless. You watch them wade into the freezing water, plunging their heads in to snatch a silver torpedo. Cubs mimic their mothers, splashing and wrestling on the shore. They look clumsy, fur-draped boulders until they move. Then they are lightning fast, capable of outrunning a horse over short distances. For the bears, summer is a frantic race to pack on fat before the snow returns. They are the undisputed masters of this landscape. Humans here walk with bells and flares, knowing that in the hierarchy of Kamchatka, we are not at the top. Surrounding this spectacle of land is the cold, nutrient-rich sea. The Sea of Okhotsk to the west and the Bering Sea to the east are among the most productive waters on the planet. The upwelling currents bring nutrients from the deep, feeding the phytoplankton, which feed the krill and herring, which feed the giants. Orcas patrol the coastlines, their black dorsal fins slicing through the gray waves. Humpback whales breach in the bays, slapping their pectoral fins against the water, a sound like a cannon shot. On the rocky islands and sea stacks, seabirds gather in colonies that number in the millions. Puffins, guillemots, cormorants, they darken the sky, their cries drowning out the sound of the surf. And soaring above them all is the Stellar's sea eagle. It is one of the heaviest eagles in the world, with a massive yellow beak and broad white shoulders. It looks prehistoric, a relic of a time when megafauna ruled the air. It watches the rivers for salmon and the sea for fish. A raptor perfectly designed for this harsh, abundant coast. Human history here is a layer much thinner than the volcanic ash. Indigenous peoples, the Itelmens, the Koryaks, the Evens, the Aleuts, have lived here for thousands of years. They adapted to the violence of the land. They built their lives around the rhythm of the salmon and the migration of the reindeer. In their mythology, the volcanoes were the yurts of spirits. The smoke was their cooking fires. They made clothes from fish skin and nettles, waterproof and durable. They perfected the dog sled, the only reliable transport when the snows came. Even today, in the northern interior, reindeer herders move across the tundra, living in skin tents, maintaining a connection to the land that modern civilization has largely forgotten. But their numbers were decimated by the arrival of the Tsars. The Russians came in the 17th century, Cossack explorers pushing east in search of soft gold, sable furs. They found a land that was brutally hard to conquer. The distances were impossible. The winters were deadly. Vladimir Atlasov, the conqueror of Kamchatka, led expeditions that mapped the peninsula and subjugated the local tribes, often with brutal force. Then came Vitus Bering, the Dane in service of the Russian crown. In 1740, his expedition founded Petropavlovsk, naming it after his two ships, St. Peter and St. Paul. It became the jumping-off point for the discovery of Alaska. For centuries, this was the uttermost edge of the empire, a place of exile and hardship. During the Crimean War, a British and French fleet attempted to take the city, assuming it would be an easy prize. They were wrong. The small garrison, aided by local hunters who shot with terrifying accuracy, repelled the armada. It was the only Russian victory in that entire war, won at the edge of the world. In the 20th century, Kamchatka vanished from the map. Under the Soviet Union, it became a closed military zone. Its strategic location near the United States and its deep, protected bays made it the perfect nest for nuclear submarines. For decades, no foreigners were allowed. Even Soviet citizens needed special permits to enter. The peninsula became a fortress. Radar stations were built on remote peaks. Bunkers were dug into the volcanic rock. This secrecy, ironically, became the savior of its nature. While other parts of the world were paved and developed, Kamchatka remained in a state of suspended animation. Industrial development was limited to the military and fishing. The wilderness remained wild because no one was allowed to touch it. When the Iron Curtain fell and the region opened up in the 1990s, the world rediscovered a treasure that had been frozen in time. Today, Kamchatka is a paradox. It is open, yet it remains inaccessible. To see the true wonders, the Valley of Geysers, the caldera of Uzon, the bear-filled Kuril Lake, you need a helicopter. Aviation is the bus service of Kamchatka. Old Me-8 helicopters, workhorses of the Soviet era, thunder over the mountain ranges, carrying tourists, scientists, and supplies. From the air, the scale of the wilderness becomes comprehensible. You see the scars of past eruptions, the Tolbachik lava flows, a blackened wasteland where the Soviets tested moon rovers because the terrain was so alien. You see the acid lakes in the craters of Gorely and Mali Semyachik, turquoise and electric blue, beautiful but deadly. You see the taiga stretching endlessly, a green carpet unbroken by roads or power lines. But this new openness brings new threats. The hunger for resources is real. Gold mining operations gnaw at the edges of pristine rivers. Poaching remains a shadow war. Bear gallbladders and salmon caviar are high-value contraband. The balance is delicate. Tourism brings money to protect the parks, but helicopters disturb the wildlife, and too many boots on delicate thermal soil can destroy the very things people come to see. The challenge for Kamchatka is to navigate the future without losing its soul. It is no longer a fortress of war, but it must become a fortress of nature. One of the most surreal landscapes in this collection of wonders is the dead forest. During the massive eruption of Tolbachik in 1975, clouds of hot ash and volcanic sand buried a larch forest. The trees were not burned, they were baked. They still stand today, skeletal trunks stripped of bark and branches, sticking out of black volcanic sand like the masts of sunken ships. It is a monochromatic graveyard, silent and eerie. Yet, even here, life is returning. Fireweed, bright pink flowers, pushes up through the black ash. Green moss begins to colonize the dead wood. It is a testament to the cycle of destruction and rebirth that defines this land. The volcano takes, and the volcano gives. The ash that kills the forest eventually breaks down into the most fertile soil imaginable. In the south, the Mutnovsky volcano offers a glimpse into the Earth's boiler room. To hike into its crater is to walk into a scene from Dante. Glaciers hang from the crater rim, melting directly into fumaroles that hiss steam at 500 degrees Celsius. The ground is hot to the touch. Bubbling mud pots spit gray clay. The contrast is jarring. Ice and fire, freezing wind and scalding steam, the smell of sulfur, and the crisp scent of snow. It is a place that feels unfinished, as if the gods are still debating what the landscape should look like. And then there is the ocean. The coastline of Kamchatka is rugged, battered by the relentless energy of the Pacific. Black sand beaches, created by pulverized lava, stretch for miles, empty of people but full of driftwood and kelp. In the Kalaktirsky beach near the city, surfers in thick wetsuits ride the cold waves, framed by snow-capped volcanoes in the distance. It is a scene of extreme contrasts. The dark water, the black sand, the white peaks, the tiny human figures challenging the immense power of the ocean. The water here is rich, teeming with crabs, halibut, and sea urchins, but it is also unforgiving. Storms can arise in hours, turning the sea into a washing machine of freezing foam. The Koryak people of the north have a different relationship with this harshness. Their culture is built on the reindeer. They migrate with the herds, following the lichen. Their music mimics the sounds of the wind and the calls of birds. Their dance is a retelling of the hunt. For them, Kamchatka is not a wilderness to be conquered, or a park to be visited. It is a home that demands respect. They know that if you disrespect the fire of the volcano or the spirit of the bear, the land will exact a price. In the modern world, their traditional way of life is under pressure, squeezed by the encroaching modern economy and the changing climate. Yet, like the birch trees that bend under the snow, but do not break, they endure. Science has found a haven here, much like in Antarctica. Volcanologists from around the world come to study the eruptions, using Kamchatka as a laboratory to understand how the Earth's crust recycles itself. They brave the toxic gases and the risk of sudden explosions to measure gas emissions and ground deformation. Biologists study the salmon runs to understand how marine nutrients feed terrestrial ecosystems. They track the bears to learn about population dynamics in a predator-dense environment. Kamchatka is a baseline, a control group for the planet. By studying a place where human impact is minimal, we learn how nature functions when left to its own devices. But even Kamchatka is not immune to the global shifts. The climate is warming here too. The glaciers are retreating. The permafrost in the north is thawing, turning solid ground into swamps. The behavior of the salmon is changing as river temperatures rise. The timing of the berry crops, essential for the bear's winter survival, is shifting. It is a slow-motion transformation, less visible perhaps than the collapse of Antarctic ice shelves, but just as profound. The fire and ice dynamic is tilting. If the ice retreats, the fire remains, but the water that balances it might grow scarce. To visit Kamchatka is to undergo a recalibration of the self. In the cities of the West, we are accustomed to being the masters of our environment. We pave the earth, we condition the air, we light the night. Here, those illusions are stripped away. You stand on the edge of a caldera, 10 kilometers wide, and realize you are dust. You watch a bear tear apart a salmon and realize that nature is not cruel. It is just necessary. You sit in a hot spring while snow falls on your face and realize that the planet provides heat just as readily as it provides cold. It is a place of elemental truth. The silence of Kamchatka is different from the silence of Antarctica. Antarctica's silence is the absence of life. It is the silence of the void. Kamchatka's silence is a held breath. It is the silence before the geyser erupts, before the bear charges, before the avalanche falls. It is a pregnant silence, full of potential energy. In the birch forests, the wind rustles the leaves, a sound the Japanese call swish swish. But underneath is the stillness of a land that watches you. There are no fences here. No keep-out signs are needed because the terrain itself forbids entry. The mountains are the walls, and the rivers are the moats. Night in Kamchatka brings a sky crowded with stars, free from the light pollution of the industrial world. The Milky Way arches over the smoking volcanoes like a bridge of light. Occasionally, the aurora borealis flickers in the north, a green curtain dancing over the tundra. Down below, the glow of lava from an active vent might mirror the stars, a red eye staring back at the universe. In these moments, the peninsula feels like a spaceship, a rugged vessel carrying life through the cold vacuum of space. The connection between the people and the land is forged in resilience. The residents of Kamchatka are a special breed. They endure the long, dark winters, the isolation, the high prices of goods shipped in by sea. They are hunters, fishermen, geologists, soldiers. They have a fierce pride in their home. They will tell you that once you have drunk the water of Kamchatka, you will always return. It is a Kamchatka sickness, a longing for the wildness that makes civilization feel gray and flat by comparison. They drive massive trucks with tires the size of a person to navigate the mud roads. They hike into bear country with casual confidence. They treat earthquakes as minor inconveniences. It shook a little, they say, while the rest of the world would panic. As you travel north, the trees shrink. The stone birch gives way to cedar elves, creeping bushes that hug the ground to escape the wind. Then the bushes disappear, and there is only moss and lichen. This is the tundra. It is a landscape of minimalism, where every calorie counts. In autumn, the tundra explodes in color: crimson, gold, russet. It is a carpet of berries: blueberries, lingonberries, cloudberries. The bears graze here like cattle, scooping up mouthfuls of berries to top off their winter fat reserves. It is a fleeting season of abundance before the white curtain falls again. The Pacific coast is dotted with the remains of the Cold War: rusting radar dishes, abandoned barracks, empty fuel drums. They are slowly being swallowed by the grass and the alder bushes. Nature is reclaiming the metal. It is a slow process, but the result is inevitable. The iron turns to rust, the rust turns to dust, and the dust feeds the soil. In 1,000 years, there will be no sign that an empire once stood guard here. But the volcanoes will still be here. The salmon will, we hope, still be running. The eagle will still circle the bay. Kamchatka teaches us about time. Not human time, measured in quarters and election cycles, but geological time. The rocks here are young, some cooling only yesterday. The land is being built in real time. We are witnessing the birth of mountains. It is a raw, messy, violent process. It is not manicured. It is not safe. It is the earth as it was before we arrived, and the earth as it will be after we are gone. There is a phenomenon here known as the blue lakes. These are small bodies of water fed by glaciers, so clear and so cold that they absorb all red light and reflect only the deepest azure. They look unnatural, like spilled paint. They are hidden high in the mountains, seen only by those willing to climb. They are the eyes of the mountains. To look into them is to see the purity of the water cycle, the journey from cloud to ice to liquid to ocean. The future of Kamchatka hangs in the balance. Will it become a mass tourism destination, with paved roads and hotels at the base of every volcano? Or will it remain a frontier, difficult and expensive to reach, protecting itself by its very inhospitality? The government has plans for development, for ski resorts and cruise terminals. But the volcanoes have the final say. A single major eruption can erase a highway or close an airport for months. The land here does not cooperate with 5-year plans. It dictates its own terms. For now, it remains one of the last great wild places. A place where you can walk for weeks and see no footprint, but your own and that of a bear. A place where the water is safe to drink from the stream. A place where the air is so clean it hurts your lungs. It is a reminder of what the world once was. Wild, terrifying, and achingly beautiful. Ultimately, Kamchatka is a story of energy. The energy of the atom splitting in the Earth's core to melt rock. The energy of the sun driving the Pacific storms. The energy of the salmon swimming against gravity. The energy of the bear breaking the spine of the fish. It is a symphony of power. Unlike the silence of Antarctica, which feels like a museum of the Ice Age, Kamchatka is a workshop. The hammers are swinging, the furnaces are roaring, the sparks are flying. It is not finished. It is alive. To end a journey in Kamchatka is difficult. You leave the fire and return to the gray stability of the mainland. You leave the danger and return to safety, but a part of you stays in the caldera. You remember the smell of the sulfur. You remember the look in the bear's eye. You remember the sound of the ocean crashing against the black cliffs. You realize that civilization is a thin veneer, a fragile shell. Beneath it, the fire still burns. Kamchatka is the crack in the shell where we can see the fire. It is the edge of the world, and it is the center of the earth. It is silence, and it is a roar.